we can have a nice discussion. I'm really humbled to be asked to be given a few words, to offer a few words. So I wanted to focus on what happened for me at the retreat, which really turned me around, especially my doom loop thinking about this past year. And I'll only just in passing mention it was because my ex walked out of prison and out of my life without a word after 12 years together. So after, well, skip that. I'd like to start with a quote from Sufi poetry that was really with me during the retreat, and it's been with me for several months. Overcome any bitterness that may have come because you were not up to the magnitude of the pain that was entrusted to you. Like the mother of the world who carries the pain of the world in her heart, each of us is part of her heart and is therefore endowed with a certain measure of cosmic pain. You are sharing in the totality of that pain, and you are called upon to meet it in joy instead of in self-pity. So I was really thinking about that. A few weeks ago, I attended a medicinal plant workshop in the High Sierra, and it was the first time in a decade that I'd actually traveled somewhere other than prison visiting room or prison matters. My intention was to get out of my comfort zone, which had really been confining me, and I wanted to stop thinking about him. Wanted to stop torturing myself. I wanted to release anger and ill will, and I wanted to be able to physically manage the day-long outings and camp in my new little REI tent. And I did. It was really heaven to be immersed in the beauty of such colorful wildflowers and the super blooms. And this is one of them. And to meet kindred spirits like Michelle, who's here, who's not on audio. But people who knew nothing of my heartache and my self-recriminations and how I was torturing myself. I didn't have any sense of purpose or identity, but I just wanted to be there and see if I could get out of what for me has been my inner prison. And I learned something very transformative. That's what I want to share. Growing near poison ivy is its antidote. It's an ally healing plant called jewelweed. And when the herbalist teacher said, the remedy is in the poison, the remedy is in the poison, it just blew my mind, and something really fell away. And that's the process that I want to share this evening. So it's natural law. It's really ordinary grace that every challenge we face contains its solution if we keep digging. The healing works through accessing the root of the pain. And when we talk about the root of the cause of suffering, this to me is an analogy in the plant kingdom. So the antidote to toxic thinking that causes our suffering is found within that suffering. It seems like a message from nature that if we observe mindfully and skillfully, if we get silent enough, then the solution is right there inside the problem. But we have to go all the way in to get the relief. We have to acknowledge it, we have to see it, we have to feel it before it can shapeshift into our ally. And then the suffering itself can be an ally on our path to liberation. It's for me like the yin yang symbol, which I love to meditate on, how at the extremes is the portal to the opposite, how it flows one into the other. So at the extreme of pain and suffering, when we think we can no longer bear the unbearable, if we stay with that condition, which is what meditation practice gives us, in my experience, then we can find the opening to the healing that lies within that pain and suffering. And that to me is the meaning of grace and how we find grace in suffering. It's inside, like inside the petal, deep inside. So transformation feels like to me is something turning into its opposite. Like you can't be a little bit pregnant or a little bit dead. You're 100% one or you're 100% at the other. And the life cycle, and certainly in samsara and in all Buddhist teachings, it's life flowing one into the other, that there really isn't any death per se, that it's all a cycle of process. So we have to live in order to die, and we have to die to our old selves to become a new person, which is what Oscar was talking about last week. We let go of who we think we are in order to become who we authentically are. And this requires a surrender of old identities that we have collected, whether they were imposed on us from childhood, from family, education, religion, especially from culture, or we built them through our own desires and motivations and our thoughts, whether they've been wholesome or unwholesome thoughts. But how do we really let go? One of my favorite quotes that I wanted to share is from my Bible of the Sacred Feminine, which is Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. She says, "Deep in the wintry parts of our mind, we are hardy stock and know there's no such thing as work-free transformation. We know that we will have to burn to the ground in one way or another, and then sit right in the ashes of who we thought we once were and go on from there." The great Buddhist teacher who I've been listening to a lot lately, Jack Kornfield, says that meditation leads us through a total dissolution of our sense of self, through a dark night, like death itself. To enter this path consciously challenges all we know of our identity, yet losing this identity is the path to freedom. Our conditioned sense of self is what the Buddha calls the greatest obstacle to enlightenment and freedom. And I found another quote I wanted to share from another Zen teacher who said, "Only to the extent that a person exposes themselves over and over again to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found within. In this daring lies dignity and the spirit of true awakening." So these quotes really pointed out to me, and I wanted to gather them for this talk, because that's to me what nature is showing us in the collaboration of the poison ivy and the jewelweed. That's what they represent for me, is that sense of having to go all the way in, all the way through, into our fears and our habits of unwholesome thinking and our actions that could be harmful, in order to get to the other side of that false self and into the freedom from suffering. And that also to me is one of the great benefits of noble silence, because that's an opportunity to face that, and it is difficult. When I was on retreat, I meditated a lot on desires and attachment, and I saw that wherever I cannot forgive, I'm not free. Just wanting to let go or making positive statements for me isn't letting go itself. Those are still mind games and what might be called spiritual bypassing, certainly aversion, which is still attachment. So avoiding feelings of shame and self-pity, it means I'm still clinging. And habits of judging and ill will are still clinging. And I saw how these thoughts have been creating my life and my misery. And I don't want that kind of life and that kind of misery. So I have to change my thoughts, not get rid of them, but change my relationship to them. And that's where the Eightfold Path, I believe, comes in for all of us. So how do we actually let go of that conditioned sense of personal self in our daily lives? Personally speaking, I saw that I have to let go of my identity as a betrayed wife, my righteous indignation, my rage as a victim, as someone who made a big bad mistake, as an undesirable older woman, invisible, a failure, and a fool. I've had to really look at who I think I am, both the self-loathing judgments and the self-important ego. And at the retreat, I think we all got an incredible, beautiful mirror that helped us transcend the limiting thoughts of who we have believed ourselves to be. We saw each other deeply and respectfully and unconditionally. And that helped me to become less entangled in that looping story that my ego manufactured around the incident in order to help me feel safe. but was it true? I couldn't know. So it's how I saw how the habitual reactions create more suffering. Stories about what I didn't want, about not getting what I did want, about losing what I thought I wanted. Again, this mental loop. And so all of you on this retreat became the jewel weed in my poison ivy, in your courageous truth-telling and your unconditional friendship, just how the retreat just unfolded so organically. So I want to share a very personal transformative moment that I did share with a couple of you there. I was staying in one of the cabins up the hill from the reception and conference center where most of you were staying. And over by me, there were also Sangha campers, and we all shared a bathhouse with shower and toilets and sink. The first morning, I got up with the sun and had finished my shower, and I was brushing my teeth, maybe around 6 or 6:30, when a pinstripe of this gorgeous golden California dawn light started streaming through the ceiling vent. And just then I heard a shower go on next door. And it was like one of those moments where your mind totally stops, where everything stops. And there's this complete stillness inside. The sound of something so ordinary really stopped my world. It stopped my mind. This seemingly insignificant thing, someone formerly incarcerated having a shower right next to me. And I flashed on my inmate family council tour in August of 2016 in Salinas Valley. We were at the outer glass doors of Sea Yard of the day room while a couple of guys were taking the showers. And here a few years later, I'm next to someone who used to be in such a prison shower, now free, out here, right next to me, showering like an ordinary miracle. My mind just went silent. There was no clinging, no avoiding, there was nothing happening. It was just a spacious awareness flowing in on the sound of a shower of somebody no longer incarcerated. And I realized really humbly that on this whole good earth and in this entire cosmos, this was a really rare thing. To have this opportunity and to be here together is just so rare and so precious. And I was showering or brushing my teeth, looking at this light next to one of you who began this nearly impossible work of liberation from the false self while incarcerated. And here we were like family, brushing our teeth and next to each other in the early morning dawn right before breakfast. And it was as if the world had just turned inside out. And all of you who were inside are now outside. And it was again like that yin yang symbol, if this is making any sense, where something became totally full and then it emptied out completely and it started all over again. Just this cycle was nothing special, and it was everything. It was everything special. It was nothing and everything at the same time. It was impermanence, and it was continual change, and it was all things made new. And it was like they say that we don't step into the same river twice, and that's how it felt. It was just amazing. So there was that. I also want to share from John O'Donohue, who's one of my favorite authors and poets, who wrote this in his book called Eternal Echoes, in a chapter called Prisons We Choose to Live In. And I think it illustrates that bridge that I've been trying to talk about a little bit here, about the journey from the false self to the true self and the value of this precious Sangha in our practice. So he wrote, "We often remain passively within our inner prisons because we believe the limitations are fixed and given. It is strange how being caught makes you lose the sense of the outside and the beyond. You become trapped on one side of a wall. After a while, you learn to see only what cages you. You begin to forget other views and possibilities. It is the lonely struggle of the prisoner to continue to remember that he belongs to life and not to limitation. Your complicity with other people's images and expectations of you allows them to box you in completely. Expectation is resentment waiting to happen. In contrast, friendship liberates you. Buddhism has a beautiful concept of friendship. It's called the Kalyana Mitra, the noble friend. And in Celtic tradition, it's Anamkara, the soul friend, which is also a book that O'Donoghue wrote. This noble friend will not accept pretense, but will gently and very firmly confront you with your own blindness. And this is how I felt at the retreat. Truth be told, I had intended this to be my goodbye to the Sangha. I didn't feel that I fit anymore. And I was getting triggered all the time, and I couldn't seem to get out of the suffering of what happened. I couldn't get out of my story. So I was running away. I was avoiding. But at the retreat, it all shifted. And it's because of this acceptance, not only of me, but everyone accepting everyone. Nobody was a victim. Nobody was a perpetrator. Everybody was just themselves. It was the most incredible community that just formed itself. There wasn't any agenda. It just happened. So I could say that you all at the Sangha opened the door to my inner prison. This community opened a door beyond the wall I was hiding behind about who I thought I was, that I didn't even realize I was hiding behind. And you all helped me see the worthiness of those 12 years of advocacy and even of the love, the unconditional love that I had, not just for him, but for everyone who was incarcerated. So that was a goodbye, but it was a goodbye to that other self and a beginning to this new life of how I really want to be, which is authentically myself. So for the most part, anger has gone, ill will has gone, vengeance has gone. I'm not quite at forgiveness, but I'm on that path with all of you and filled with gratitude for their lessons. So often we talk about healing, and I want to give another quote. I've been a journalist in this life, so I like to quote other people. So Desmond Tutu says about healing that healing does not mean reversing. Healing does not mean that what happened will never again cause us to hurt. Does not mean we will never miss those who have been lost to us or that which has been taken from us. Healing means that our dignity is restored and we are able to move forward in our lives. So for me, the Sangha now is a refuge where we all hold space for each other, to hold that cosmic pain that I said in the Sufi poem, and to bear the unbearable together, to feel safe enough to do that deep dive as we walk each other home, and to dig into those roots that cause suffering. The Buddha called this feeling of gratitude one of the rare and most beautiful qualities in the world, and I can definitely agree. My last quote is from Rumi. It's, why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open? Move outside the tangle of fear thinking. The entrance door to the sanctuary is inside you. The jewel weed to the poison ivy. Those jewels are within ourselves. And we, the false self to me is the poison ivy. And the authentic self is the jewel weed, the antidote and the remedy to it. It's within us. So I'd like to end with a little metta practice. I've also had a hard time with this, and I finally came to a place where I realized I had my own permission to adjust the phrases, because when somebody's done a lot of harm to us, it's hard for me anyway to say, may you be happy, or I wish you well. Honestly, I'm just not there yet, but I want to be. So I think that's a healthy, wholesome desire. So what I want to close with is that I can wish that regardless of defilements and harmful actions, that regardless of what happened, whatever happened, most of which, I'll never know why it happened or really the truth of what happened, but that I can wish, and we can wish, those who have done harm, ourselves who have done harm to others and to ourselves, that I can wish him, I can wish myself, and I can wish everyone to be free of the very things that do cause harmful actions, to be free of the causes of fear and hatred and cowardice and betrayal, and to be liberated from the false confined sense of who we think we are, which to me is the inner prison, and to be able to dig deeply into the roots of our suffering so that we may genuinely wish that we all become our authentic Buddha, liberated, enlightened, happy selves. So may all beings everywhere be free of hatred and ill will. May all beings be free of illusion and the seductions of Mara. May all beings be free of harmful thoughts and actions. May we all be free of our inner and outer prisons. And may we all find the way to our true nature in community. So thank you so much. Namaste. Thank you.